morning/afternoon, everyone. My name is Jaquarius Jackson. I work with the Baylor Scott and White Health and Wellness team. I'm as a wellness advisor. If y'all have been with us for a while, then you know that we put on our monthly webinar series. And today for our series, we will be talking about understanding PTSD. If this is your first time joining us, we do put on these series once a month, usually at the very top of the month, on a different health topic every single time. We really encourage you guys to always join us. We try to talk about a different variety of the things in the community and some things that you guys want to enjoy hearing about as well. We do have a guest speaker today that is a little bit more of an expertise in this area than I am, Tara, who's going to be talking today a little bit more about the topic of PTSD. Tara, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and talk about your background, and then I'll let you take it away for the rest of the presentation.
Hello, everyone. As Jaquarius said, my name's Tara Plybon, and I am a wife of a veteran who was severely catastrophically injured in Afghanistan back in 2009. Prior to that, I was a journalist for many years, and when he got hurt, I had to become a subject matter expert of everything that was wrong with him to help him get better and recover from all his injuries. One of the worst ones that we've dealt with and continue to deal with is post-traumatic stress. And post-traumatic stress, most people, you'll see it written down as PTSD. And the reason why that is, to me, when you subject a person to the horrors of war and seeing the worst that humanity has to bring, you can't help but come home unscathed by that. That's a sign of a healthy brain. The disorder is implied when say the veteran, for instance, in this circumstance, PTSD can happen to anybody in any sort of experience. And I'll get more into that in a second. But when the veteran comes home and tries to assimilate back into normal life, they're unable to fall asleep due to anxiety provoked by their post-traumatic stress. You combine that with the pain that they're in from potential injuries, and you can see where this could snowball and create a problem. Insomnia is a comorbidity that happens most of the time. Well, when someone's not sleeping all night and the rest of the family has to get up and go to work, go to school, kids have to go to their activities, and that person is suffering and can't sleep and rest, they're not going to be the most cheerful person to be around. I know me, I need my sleep. Anyways. So that aside, thank you for having me today. And I love sharing information, helping people cope, finding treatment and help, because there's so many ways that you can find a way to manage this. It's not a life sentence of torment, no clinic. Post-traumatic stress is a mental health condition that's triggered by a terrifying event, either experiencing it or witnessing it. Symptoms may include flashbacks, nightmares, severe anxiety, as well as uncontrollable thoughts that keep popping up about the event. Most people who go through traumatic events have difficulty adjusting and coping, but with time and good self-care and counseling, the symptoms can be manageable. When the symptoms become worse or static and don't change and last for months, years, you will have PTSD. When it interferes with everything and you can't go back to work, you can't maintain your family relationships, that's when it's time, way overdue to get help. Getting effective treatment after PTSD symptoms can be critical to reduce your symptoms and improve your overall function in life. To me, the big breakdown in what makes somebody feel post-traumatic stress is the situation that they were in made them feel completely helpless and powerless. So, for instance, myself, I experienced this unbeknownst to me at the time. I was so used to giving advocacy talks to other caregivers of veterans about what kind of symptoms and issues their veterans might be coping with. But when it happened to me, I was flummoxed. So I had a surgery back in 2013 where the anesthesia wore off. And during the procedure, I couldn't talk because I had a breathing tube in, my hands were tied down, and I had a washcloth on my eyes, so I couldn't even make an expression with my eyes to notify somebody in the medical team that I was indeed awake. So I could hear and feel everything. And after I got out of recovery, And a week later, I mean, I explained to them what happened. They followed up with me a week later after I'd gotten off the pain medicine. I would try to go to sleep and I could feel my heart racing. I could hear the blood pounding in my ears. And I thought it was a weird side effect from surgery. I know, isn't it's we're all, I think we see it in the media that it's all just for veterans, but it's not. And so when I called my doctor, she said, "Honey, no, it's you've got post-traumatic stress from this procedure." And what happened is our brain, it learns pain first. So for example, my brain realized that when I laid down and went to sleep in the surgery anesthesia, I got technically eviscerated. And my brain wanted to protect me from falling asleep ever again. So as soon as I would lay down, I would get this jolt of adrenaline, which was a protective fight or flight reaction kicking in. And it took quite a bit of acute EMDR therapy, and I'll explain that later. That's a great way of helping with anxiety and things from a trauma when it just happens. And yeah, so just wanted to give you an example of civilian induced trauma that results in PTSD. And just to give you a little bit of hope, I am now able to take naps. For years, I couldn't even do that. So I am grateful to have my napping back again. Technical breakdown about how the brain and the physical body all work together with PTSD. So the left and the right side of the brain work together in processing information. Any sort of information, whether it's good or bad, gets put into our short-term memory, where after a while it's put into the amygdala, kind of towards the back of our brain. We want to forget about something horrible, it can't selectively filter what it wants to forget, which creates a really frustrating issue for the person suffering. Oftentimes, the person will be late for work because they lost track of time or didn't fully sleep the night before, hit the alarm, and overslept. Many patients can't regulate their moods because their brains are constantly in a state of fight or flight reaction. When someone's suffering from PTSD, oftentimes their brains haven't fully processed the memory of that trauma and processed it properly between both sides of the brain. Our horrible memories create a chemical mix of adrenaline and other neurotransmitting chemicals. This is what causes someone to run out of bed from a violent nightmare that causes them to actually get physically ill. The first few years my husband came back from Afghanistan, I had to put a wheelchair by his side of the bed because he would wake up from these horrible nightmares, violently ill from the horrible memory of it, but he would forget in his haste of waking up in the middle of his sleep that he was missing part of his leg. And so I had to put the wheelchair there to kind of stop him so I could help him around and help him safely get to the restroom. But that's how powerful the brain body connection is. I mean, these horrible memories can make you physically ill. And it's important to help your family member get help to process these. Over time, a person can improve their life by learning coping strategies to help them focus on being present to the current situation and doing breathing exercises that helps reinforce calmness and safety. But I wanted to touch on a little bit about that physical mind connection again. It's you'll For instance, my husband one day, we were all making pizza, my son and I in the kitchen, and our old gas stove caught some of the cheese on fire. And he kind of woke up out of kind of napping on the couch and woke up, and he was really upset because that smell triggered something really, really horrible. And people, like, I have a friend, she was unfortunately a victim of domestic violence. Well, she smelled a cologne one day when we were walking through a store, and she just stopped in her tracks because the most powerful sense that we have is actually our sense of smell. You would think our hearing or our sight would be that, but when it comes to memories, and unfortunately the bad memories, that sense of smell will really trigger. When I say trigger, when people suffer from post-traumatic stress, there's certain, and going back to what I'm about to say about the physical mind, it's the sight. What did they see? Did they see dust flying. Like in Afghanistan, the soil was very talc-like, like baby powder. So clouds of dust. Did they see flashing lights? Did they see, you know, for me, I saw the cloth of a washcloth over my eyes when I was trying to get help. Um, Sounds, what did you hear? My husband heard bombs, lots of bombs and gunfire. I heard my surgeon giving the orders in which they had to move my organs. Certain things like that. Um, did you hear someone screaming to help you? Did you, hear a child cry? What did you hear during your trauma? The smells, again, what cologne did that person wear? Um, Taste. Did you taste something during the incident? Um, I had the weird taste of the stuff they ran through my veins prior to the surgery in my mouth. Everyone has a different experience with that. And I don't want to upset anyone by elaborating on these. Touch. What did you feel on your hands or body during the incident? Um, every single sense the brain records to possibly help save you from another similar event. I mean, it's kind of neat that our brain is that amazing to try to protect us. Unfortunately, it's not helpful in our civilian day-to-day life of trying to go to work and be a productive citizen. When someone is sent to war, for instance, their brains are living in a stressful environment for up to 18 months at a time. When your brain is living in that kind of environment, there's an actual biochemical change that happens in the brain because every day it's expecting the worst to happen to itself. So the good news, guys, I don't mean to talk about all the sad things about PTSD because it isn't fun. People don't deserve to have it, but it is a capable. There's ways you can cope and ways you can improve. So EMDR, that stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It gets both sides of the brain communicating together to help process that memory and get it back in the amygdala where it belongs. It takes about 8 weeks. Your the counselor that provides that has to be specially certified. And at the end of the presentation, I have links and stuff that you can click on to get more help. Basically, they'll use a light bar to kind of make your eyes either go back and forth while they talk to you about various things that you've experienced to take away your anxiety. And it's pretty incredible. And sometimes they use paddles in your hands or tapping on your knees, depending on if you have a visual challenge or if hearing's not so great. They can work with you on your various challenges. But it is a really powerful therapy. My husband says it's one of the hardest that he's ever done, but I saw immediate impact. I'm going to say this right now. Everyone's mileage may vary with treatments. It just People are complex. Our brains are the most miraculous machines, but everyone comes to the table with millions of different experiences, many different situations. So just because something might respond well for someone in this amount of time doesn't make anyone less than if they're finding more challenges that they need to get taken care of. So I just wanted to make sure that anyone's an overachiever hears this and thinks, okay, I should be good by now, because that's kind of how I looked at myself. I'll be honest, and it didn't work out that way. So cognitive behavioral therapy, this is one that's been around, gosh, since the 70s, which is a great therapy modality. Um, Basically, it's talk therapy where the doctor helps you navigate your behaviors around your bad memories and helps you cope and find ways to move forward. Anti-anxiety medicines, these aren't for everyone. I know a lot of people like to do Eastern medicine, acupuncture, aromatherapy to help calm themselves. Whatever, there's so many options out there. It doesn't have to be big pharma. Um, One of the most amazing medicines that I came along the way of trying to help my husband with his physical adjustment to PTSD was a medicine called prazosin. It was written as a blood pressure medicine. It lowered blood pressure. But one of the most amazing side effects of it is it took the adrenaline response out of nightmares. So when the person woke up out of a nightmare, it for my husband's situation, it wasn't this need to go be physically sick from the violence of it. It took some of the oomph out of that when you wake up and your heart's pounding. Unfortunately, he couldn't tolerate it very well. It made his blood pressure too low. Like I said, everyone is so complex and different. So I recommend if one thing doesn't work, don't give up. There's so many different options out there. Mindfulness, it's a principle that has helped me so much as a caregiver to endure 15 years of taking care of somebody. And at times I was sandwiched caring for an elder as well. And Eckhart Tolle, he's written some really good books about mindfulness. And mindfulness, the theory is look at what you're doing right there, right now. And instead of thinking, I got to take the trash out, mindfulness kind of encourages you to reframe your thoughts to a more positive stance where you can say, wow, I've got to throw out this garbage. My family is fortunate that I was able to put food on the table and we have all this trash from our packaging, food prep, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. I mean, I've used mindfulness when I had to go to the umpteenth appointment at the VA. It actually really helps. And it helps the person that you're taking care of too, to reframe some of the why me instead of, okay, well, what what do I have left physically, mentally? How can I be my best self and live my best life going forward? And what another part of mindfulness is something called dreamscaping, where when someone has a nightmare, when they wake up, to help them get back to sleep, you try to focus their mind to something pleasant. So my husband and I, we sat down and I said, all right, tell me your best place on earth where you're absolutely happy, you're calm, relaxed. Tell me how that is. So for him, it was the mountains of Colorado. So then I would say, all right, describe how it smells, how it feels, how it sounds. What are the noises you hear? What are the smells around you when you're in the mountainside? And as I think you guys can tell, this touches back on how the five senses are involved with these horrible nightmares people with PTSD suffer. So by dreamscaping and trying to set the brain forward into a positive imagery and positive set of memories, and you rub the person's back a little bit, have them deep breathe, sometimes you can help them fall asleep with a lot of calm and a little bit of peace. I mean, it's not foolproof. It doesn't always work, but it's it's better than someone just not being able to fall back asleep ever again. So there's that. So a little bit more of the physical part of PTSD, just to help you understand that too. When you see someone sitting there and their legs always like bouncing, you see the leg just wiggle, 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 wiggle. My husband's leg is always in motion. And at first I thought it was something with his injuries, maybe something with his spine or his leg damage or whatever. But it turns out there's a lot of self regulation that happens when you have post traumatic stress. And that's why he has his leg moving a lot. And other people I've seen along the years, different walks of life, but I know people that had suffered some trauma just because they've talked to me about it. And I would see this anxiousness. And this is why. Sympathetic nervous system has nerves responsible for sensory input and motor output. It it responds with the right amount of activation in the event of a crisis. So when you're activated, your body pauses the less critical functions like digesting food. This is why soldiers have reported having to use the restroom during war. Your body literally dumps everything out of you to make your body efficient to run and take evasive action. Increases your heart rate, increased blood pressure and blood pressure volume. That's why I was hearing my blood pound in my ears. I didn't even know what the sound was at first. I mean, it was deafening. Glycogenesis, converting the sugar stored in your liver into glucose to fuel your body so you can run away fast. Um, Gastrointestinal muscle movement stops. So you get indigestion or diarrhea. Widened pupils. You'll notice that if you see one of your loved ones having a dissociative period, or if they're having a flashback, you'll notice their pupils look different. Their tone might sound flat. So if they normally have modulation and emphasis in their voice, you may notice a flat tone because their mind is back where they experienced that problem. decreased enzyme and insulin secretion, increased sweating. If you live with PTSD, your amygdala may be too responsive. If something reminds you of your past trauma, your sympathetic nervous system might activate even when it doesn't have to. This means you spend a lot of time experiencing stress. Eventually, this really taxes your adrenal glands. And PTSD does impact other areas of your brain. So now that we've covered the sympathetic nervous system and where some of the technical aspects of PTSD come from, how do we get someone out of the house ever again? How do we get someone to have a normal life? Many World War II veterans are still having serious nightmares and serious issues with post-traumatic stress. But fortunately, in today's emotional health, mental health world, we're a kinder environment where I'm starting to see a tiny bit, and I say tiny, of active duty really trying to focus on having soldiers get help after a mission. Um, doesn't happen with every group everywhere, but it's a start. And to me, as long as we can get the stigma away from treatment, we'll have healthier people lasting a lot longer in their jobs. So the first thing to do is think about all the social situations that you and your family like to do. Think of all the little complications that might exist. Now, let's say your family member has an injured leg and they can't sit on really tall chairs. Make sure where they go has the proper level of chairs. What I do is I go online to websites and look at the seating. So I know I can take my husband somewhere where he's actually going to be physically comfortable. Because if you can be physically comfortable and feel safe, that's half the battle. That allows that person to kind of have as much of a minute sense of calm, which goes a long way with handling the rest of a crowd that they're not familiar with. For instance, my husband likes the movies, so we go to the first showing of the day. It's a lot quieter, less crowded. Never put their backs to a crowd. That way the person feels a little more in control. They can see the exits, they can see everyone coming in, and make a schedule. People thrive on schedules. Uncertainty, last minute schedule changes. Don't be surprised if you see some annoyance, frustration there. Putting a calendar, a shared calendar, is one of the most helpful things you can do. Exercise, even if they won't leave the house, getting them to go out in the backyard for a little bit, get to some real sunshine. Go on the internet, look up neuroplasticity. It is the study of giving the brain positive things to do so it builds new blood vessels. So if there is some brain damage, they can develop healthy blood flow around other parts of the brain. Look at every encounter with your loved one and think of this word HALT, HALT. That means hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. So if they start snapping at you, try to think of what is making them snappish immediately. Because most of the times it's not anything we're doing. It's what are they internally feeling, but maybe not be able to communicate, or they're not realizing how hungry they really are, but wow, they haven't eaten in 6 hours. Their blood sugar is low. Of course, they're going to be cranky. Hunger is a real thing for me. I want to talk about coping and help and resources. So, NAMI, the National Association of Mental Illness, you can go to their website. They often have group meetings, support. They have articles you can download, even some certifications you can get if you want to help others in your area. The Samaritan Center of Austin, they are amazing. They have a Hope for Heroes grant where you can help your family get counseling low cost for veterans. Heroes Night Out, they're a great nonprofit there in Cedar Park where they have activities every month for free for veterans and their families. Horse therapy has been revolutionary in helping my husband heal from his combat. Just all the anxiety and anger and grief that PTSD and going through survivor's guilt bring to somebody. The Cohen Centers, you can often find counseling there. and the rest Wounded Warrior Project, Elizabeth Dole Foundation, and Semper Fi. Semper Fi helps any veteran that has service-connected injuries. They're amazing. I know I didn't, and I'm sorry if I got too technical, but I wanted to give you guys a lay of the land and most of all, reaffirm that there is ways for your patient and loved one to have some peace and to adjust. It just takes time and constant reassurance that you're there as long as they're fighting to get better. There's ways. So I'd like to open it up to any questions. Asked about child trauma. So the same principles are even more critical on children. Children react the same ways. They will often act out with behavior issues after a trauma. But it's the same, those five senses and what they've experienced. The good thing about children is that they're very resilient and their brains don't have years of conditioning and patterns in them. So early intervention on helping them process their traumas and getting them help, they have a way more better outlook and improvement in quality of life than someone in their 50s getting help for the first time. That's not to say that someone in their 50s can't be helped. I'm not saying that at all. But children in trauma, there's a lot of really good research there that shows really good help and intervention can go miles. Um, I've seen it too when I look at the children of wounded veterans and what they experience in the household. And I've seen a lot of positive growth there. So I just wanted to share that part of hope when it comes to children.
Remember, we do always have this member resource portal for you guys to interact with. Also a really good place for you guys to look for some of those counselors or therapists, behavior specialists
That
that
app
Tara
is
mentioned as well.
amazing. Such a great app. It is such a time saver for caregiving. I can't tell you how many times I've emailed my medical teams for my husband and my aunt. It is great. Jaquarius, great recommendation.
Someone mentioned what was the word that you suggested, and
Neuroplasticity. So it's the word neuro, like neurology, with the word plasticity, which kind of has the word plasticky in there. What that means is building new pathways to the brain. And by providing something good like horse therapy, I do that, take my husband to that. It builds new pathways to the brain and encourages blood flow and circulation, which helps the brain health overall. But the good stuff coming into the brain makes the brain happier and the patient happier. And you as the caregiver, way happier to see that person calm and happy. It has been a game changer. I cannot understate this enough. And I wish I'd spent more time talking about it. But horse therapy, equine therapy, worth it. Um, you can go to pathinternational.org and click in there and find a center near you. The programs are free for veterans and developmentally challenged children or kids with any sort of emotional issues. That's how they started, was to help children. But they realized in white papers it would help veterans, and it has. It's been a huge game changer. I can't, man, I would hug every horse I see because they have given back my husband to me more than any counselor, therapist, or anything. The horse has been, wow. Google it. I can't tell you enough to go into that website and find a place near you. It'll be great for you and your family.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Tara. We really, really greatly appreciate all the great information that you gave all of us today. And definitely this really great kind of library of information with all the resources where to go for help. And then thank you for all the attendees that hopped on today as well. As a reminder, we do have our monthly webinar series that come on every single month. So we definitely encourage you guys to join us again next month for our webinar over sun safety.